Fallen samurai called Ochimusha, distinctive hairstyle and unhygienic appearance. When they hear the word Ochimusha, Japanese people have this image of this kind of appearance. For this reason, there are many occasions when they find fallen samurai amusing as a kind of story. However, the life of the fallen samurai was far more epic than we can imagine. In this video, I explain about the fallen samurai. We will also explain a way in the end of a fallen samurai and their epic battles with fallen samurai hunters, so please watch to the end. Please subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like our videos. First of all, we would like to elaborate on our topic, the fallen samurai. We don't call them Ochimusha because of their distinctive appearance. To be called a fallen samurai, a person must meet certain conditions. That condition is that the samurai must escape and survive as a loser. Samurai who was defeated in battle is divided into 3 patterns. The first is that they are struck down by the enemy and die. The second is that the general of the losing side surrenders in the middle of the battle and dies taking responsibility for it. The third pattern is that he dies because of betrayal by his own people. These 3 patterns can be divided into 3 categories. In either case, the person dies as a result. Basically, the loser is considered not to live. However, when a battle is lost, there are warriors who flee the battlefield to survive, either because their chain of command collapses or they realize that they will die. In especially, samurai wearing helmets called kabuto would take off their kabuto as soon as they fled, running away 1 step ahead of the others. This is because the kabuto reveals the identity of the samurai. During the Warring States period, top knots called mageia were tied on the back of the head, which became an obstacle when wearing kabuto, so they were untied and tied in the back before going into battle. Therefore, during the frantic flight from defeat, the hair was bound and untied, transforming into the fallen samurai hair you may have imagined. That unique hairstyle had such a background. Incidentally, not only leaving the battlefield but also becoming a member of a samurai clan or its vassals is called ochiudo and is treated in the same way as a fallen samurai. One famous example of such a ochiudo is the Heike no Ochiudo, fallen samurai of the Heike clan. In some cases, survivors of the Heike clan who were defeated in the Genpei Wars established villages in mountainous areas. In modern times, people who leave their hair long on both sides and candidates who lose elections are sometimes called Ochimusha. However, it is only called Ochimusha, not moving somewhere far away or running away from someone. Why were the fallen samurai of that time running away so desperately? It had something to do with the existence of natural enemies of fallen samurai. Next, we describe the fallen samurai hunters. There was a reason why fallen samurai were escaping so desperately. That reason is the existence of fallen samurai hunters. Why do they need to run away from fallen samurai hunters? As you may have guessed from the name, it is because the fallen samurai hunters would kill them. Of course, there are times when enemy samurai seek out and hunt defeated samurai, but it was the local farmers and peasants who were really feared. During the Warring States period, as part of self-defense against defeated fallen samurai, it was customary to loot and sell armor, katana, and other equipment of fallen samurai on the premise that they would be killed, and to extort money and goods from them. At that time, those who were defeated in battles and political disputes were perceived as people who had lost the protection of the law and were not protected by it. In fact, during the Warring States period, such things were allowed to happen, and even fallen samurai of high rank were attacked regardless of their status. Here is one question that viewers may be wondering. If a samurai and a peasant fought, who do you think would be stronger? Simply thinking, the samurai would be stronger. No matter how many battles they lose, there is no doubt that the samurai are superior in warfare. In a one-on-one fight, the samurai would win. The only weapons that farmers have are bamboo spears and farming tools, which are weaker than katana. One would think that the samurai would be able to escape, but the reality seems to have been ruthless. According to records of the time, when the village learned of the appearance of the fallen samurai, they rang a bell, and 300 farmers in full gear gathered to conduct an organized hunt for the fallen samurai. The farmers hid in places where fallen samurai were likely to appear, and ambushed and killed them. In other words, it was difficult for even samurai to escape from organized hunts for fallen samurai. They could not cope with the organized hunt for fallen samurai because they would flee from the battlefield where the chain of command had ceased to function. Even if they are able to escape the hunt for fallen samurai must survive in the harshest of places where they will not encounter people. Of course, they are self-sufficient in food and water. Since there is no water, they need to find drinking water. But it is not easy to find. River water is often contaminated by dead soldiers, and in some cases, wells in villages near war zones have been rendered unusable by corpses and human feces. Therefore, in most cases, people die after drinking contaminated water or die of starvation. Since there are not many records of people surviving as fallen samurai, you can imagine that fallen samurai are left with a miserable end. It is as if death was a certainty when they lost the battle. The only way to escape is to flee in groups with money and goods and establish a settlement, or flee to a temple. If you go back in a time slip and become a fallen samurai, remember these two options. Finally, let me introduce some of the people who were the targets of the hunt for fallen samurai. The first is Mitsuhide Akechi. Mitsuhide is best known for the Honnoji incident, in which he rebelled against Oda Nobunaga and attacked the city. Please check the previous video for more details. In fact, 11 days after the Honnoji incident, Hideyoshi's army returned from a siege at Bichu Takamatsu Castle and clashed with Mitsuhide Akechi's army that had defeated Nobunaga Oda. This was the Battle of Yamazaki, and as a result, Mitsuhide was defeated. Mitsuhide immediately realized his defeat due to the difference in strength and became the fallen samurai and set out for Sakamoto Castle in the middle of the night. Mitsuhide was advancing along a narrow path with his vassals when he was stabbed in the side of his armor by a farmer's bamboo spear from a small bush. Seriously wounded, Akechi Mitsuhide committed suicide before drawing his last breath and had his head hidden in a nearby ditch by a vassal. Thus, even Akechi Mitsuhide, who defeated Oda Nobunaga, was killed by a fallen samurai hunter. Bamboo spear gains strength as their tips are burned, and peasants with the skill to finish off a target with a single blow to a vital point are not to be underestimated. Mitsuhide, who left his mark on history, also met an untimely end when he was killed by a fallen samurai hunter. The second person is Anayama Baisetsu. Baisetsu was killed by a fallen samurai hunter, which was also related to the Honnoji incident. At that time, Nobunaga Oda and Ieyasu Tokugawa were allies. Baisetsu had betrayed Takeda and was working with Ieyasu. Ieyasu and Baisetsu were on their way to Kyoto when the Honnoji incident occurred. However, when they learned that Nobunaga had been killed by Mitsuhide, they hurriedly decided to flee to Mikawa province. Ieyasu, another famous historical figure, had not foreseen Mitsuhide's rebellion and Nobunaga's death, and had only about 30 guards when he fled. Baisetsu was also supposed to flee with him, but he did not trust Ieyasu and decided to go separately. However, their separate plans turned out to be a bad thing, and while they were escaping, they encountered a hunter who was hunting fallen samurai. The hunters were said to have attacked Baisetsu in an attempt to steal his clothes, as he was well dressed. Another source says that she was mistaken for Ieyasu for having acted separately and was encountered by the fallen samurai hunters. In either case, if Ieyasu had not acted separately from him, he might have been able to return to Mikawa province as Ieyasu did. Ieyasu managed to survive by having Hattori Hanzo guide him to a safer route, but it is frightening because he could have been the victim of a fallen samurai hunt. Finally, the third person is Nobunaga Mochizuki. Nobunaga was born as the third son of Takeda Nobushige, the younger brother of Takeda Shingen. When his elder brother Mochizuki Trust died in 1564, he succeeded to the Mochizuki clan in 1565 and took the name Mochizuki Nobunaga. 10 years later, the Battle of Nagashino occurred. This battle was fought between the allied forces of Nobunaga Oda and Ieyasu Tokugawa, numbering 38,000 people, and Katsuyori Takeda's army of 15,000 people. The overwhelmingly disadvantaged Takeda's army suffered a crushing defeat. Nobunaga fled for his home country. However, he was killed by a fallen samurai hunter at Misono Pass in Aichi Prefecture. Incidentally, that pass is now called Mochizuki Pass, and it seems that the katana Nobunaga was carrying is there. Thus, we have introduced you to the miserable end of fallen samurai. Has your image of fallen samurai changed? The unique appearance of the fallen samurai was evidence of their desperate escape. That's all for this time. Please subscribe to our channel and give us a high rating if you like. See you again in the next video. Thank you for watching.